2, 1. You are now live.
Good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome to the Licensing Subcommittee today, Wednesday, 20th July 2022. The first task is to elect a chairman. I am the chair of the Licensing Committee and I'm the presiding person at this meeting. And therefore, I ask please for nominations for chairman for this subcommittee this morning.
Yeah, we'll recommend yourself, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. May I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. Okay, duly elected then, we will move on and I will ask our clerk, Michelle, please, if she kindly take us through housekeeping. Thank you.
Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the chairman. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. If joining remotely, please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Please mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the chairman will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen. For purposes of those present in the room, if you hear a continuous fire alarm, please follow me out of the building to the nearest fire escape. We will exit via the members' entrance and meet in the members' car park at the front of the building. Finally, if joining remotely, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and can everyone ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cutler. Could we please now have any apologies?
Yes, one apology for absence received from Councillor Farquhar, and he has been replaced with Councillor Kelsey this morning, who was our first reserve member. Thank you.
Grateful thanks, Councillor Kelsey, for stepping in at such short notice. So moving on then to declarations of interest. Councillor Farr, do you have any declarations of interest?
No declarations of interest.
And Councillor Kelsey?
None from me, Chair.
And for completeness, I have none either. Moving on then, protocol for public speaking at agenda item 4 has been published, and please note the protocol for public meeting has been circulated with the agenda sheet. Moving on then to the substantive, which is item 5, Temptation 1 Yelverton Yode, Bournemouth. An application has been received for the renewal of the sexual entertainment venue licence to permit relevant entertainment to continue for a further 12-month period at the premises known as Temptation. Also, a variation to the second floor plan is also requested to bring it in line with the Licensing Act 2003 premises licence plan, which was granted by way of a minor variation on the 15th of April 2022. And in addition, the applicant also wishes to seek the approval of a new window display. This matter is brought before the subcommittee for determination, and I'll ask everybody now to introduce themselves, state their role, and for the members to also state their ward. I'll start with myself. My name is Councillor Jude Butt. I'm chairman of the Licensing Committee and chair of this subcommittee for the purposes of today's business, and my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Farr.
Good morning, Councillor Farr, Kimpson Ward, member of this subcommittee today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Kelsey.
Yep, Councillor Kelsey, a member for East Cliff and Springbourne and a member of this board for today's meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Lewin.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Lewin. I'm a barrister instructed by the council to act as legal advisor today.
We have a fire alarm. One moment. I don't think
it's the regular check.
It's a regular check. I believe it's. This happened at the last. Okay, sorry about that. So we will carry on with the introductions, and then I have a small issue to cover. So thank you. Mr. Lewin, would you like to introduce yourself again?
Yes, Chair. So good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Lewin. I'm a barrister instructed by the Council to advise members today.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Rogers?
Yes, good morning. My name is Sarah Rogers. I'm Senior Licensing Officer for BCP Council.
Thank you. And Mrs. Cutler?
Good morning, I'm Michelle Cutler and I'm the clerk to the Licensing Subcommittee today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland? Mr. Sutherland, can you hear me?
Sorry, madam. I was a little slow in unmuting myself. My name is Robert Sutherland, solicitor for the applicant. I was hoping that I would be with Mr. Mal, Naresh Mal. Unfortunately, due to some complications, I think, following the extreme weather the last few days, he's in the process of moving, and that's meant that we're not able to be in the same place, but we're able to proceed. And obviously, I'm assisted by Mr. Weatherstone, who is the director of the applicant.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we have Susan Stockwell. Mrs. Stockwell. Okay, Mrs. Stockwell's not with us. Mr. Yes.
Hello.
Hello, Mrs. Stockwell.
Sorry,
If you just like to introduce yourself, please.
Yes, it's Susan Stockwell and I'm an objector. I do apologise, the doorbell just rang.
Not a problem, not a problem. And Mr. Yassin, he's not with us at the moment. And Councillor Lisa Northover.
Hello, I'm Councillor Lisa Northover. I represent Muscliffe and Stratton Park Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Northover. And Councillor Beverley Dunlop.
Good morning, Chairman. I'm Beverley Dunlop. I'm the portfolio holder at BCP Council for Tourism, Culture and Vibrant Places. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunlop. Can you now hear me? You are having difficulty hearing.
I have to say that I have to turn you right up, Chairman, and then just turn it down when other people speak. It's obviously just a little bit of a technicality. I'm sure I can manage. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. If you do have any difficulties, please just do put your hand up and we'll sort things out. Thank you. And just for completeness, all the objectors' names will be published in the public domain. I was advised that I needed to make that statement. Thank you. So before I run through procedure, just to check that everybody who's given notice for intention to speak has been identified this morning, and anybody who wishes to withdraw that representation or wishes not to speak to raise their hand now. Oh, Mrs. Randall, I am so sorry I have forgotten you because you weren't on my list and you're extremely important. So Mrs. Randall and Nanka Randall, if you'd like to introduce yourself, my apologies.
Yeah, sorry, I know, easily forgettable. Nanka Randall, I'm the licensing manager and also currently head of service for Safer Communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My apologies, I didn't have you on my original running list. You certainly weren't omitted for any other reason. Thank you. So we are content with regards to representation. So I'll take you now through the proposed procedure and order of speaking. It's fairly simple. The licensing officer will present her report. The applicant will make their application. There'll be questions of the applicant by all party and members of the subcommittee will go first. We don't have any responsible authorities, but we do have 3 at the moment other persons, objectors, who will then make their representations. And there'll be the questions of the other persons. Members of the committee will go first. All parties have the right to question objectors. All parties will be given an opportunity then to sum up with the party who spoke last to go first. The hearing will then conclude and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Beginning with the day or the last day in which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, the notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'll ask all parties now if they're happy and will confirm agreement of this procedure, or if not, to make representations. So, Mr. Lewin, are you content?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Rogers, are you content?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland?
Madam, in relation to the objections, obviously the procedure, the legal procedure, enables obviously all objectors to remain anonymous, though I appreciate that names are given. What I don't know is which person goes with which objection. That may become clear, but if that was possible to identify, that would be helpful.
Thank you for that. I'd like some response, please, Mr. Lewin. Could you respond to that with regard to the objectors' names, etc.?
Yes, so I think if the objectors are in the meeting and speaking today, perhaps they can indicate which of the where in the papers their objection is. So I think at the moment we've numbered them 1 to 5. I think that's probably the best way to go through it.
And with regard to their right not to be identified?
Well, this is a public hearing, Chair, so I think as a matter of fairness, it's probably right that they should make themselves known.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that. I hope you are content, Mr. Sutherland, with that approach.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much. Mr. Weatherstone.
Hi, yes, sorry. Yep. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherstone. If you'd kindly keep your video on, it's easier for me. Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
And thank you. Mrs. Stockwell, are you content with the proposed procedure?
I'm still a little confused about my right to remain anonymous. It gave me that right, whether or not I'm in a public hearing.
Okay, I will refer to our legal advisor to answer that. Mr. Lewin, please.
Well, that is right, but there's no clear rule when it comes to a public hearing. My view generally is that if people attend a public hearing, they should identify themselves, so the applicant knows who they need to respond to, and perhaps it's relevant to the subcommittee's decision in assessing, where do they live, how might they be impacted by the premises, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Mr. Lewin. I think we are where we are, Mrs. Stockwell. No other information is shared, just your name.
Righto, I accept that.
Okay, so we'll keep it just to your name. Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We don't have Mr. Yassin with us. Councillor Northover, are you content?
Yes. Okay, I'm content. Yeah.
Thank you. And Councillor Dunlop?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just clarify that I will have an opportunity to ask the licensing officer some questions when they have presented? I noticed you didn't mention that specifically.
Yes, all parties have an opportunity to question all those presenting today, Councillor Dunlop. That's general. So once the licensing officer has presented her report, the members will be able to ask questions on points of fact, followed by all other parties present. Okay, in turn, and I'll bring you in. Be assured of that. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So finally, I'd just like to remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on the written representations. And I want to be very clear on this, please, that all questions will be asked through the chairman and no cross-examination of parties. So nobody asking a question of another individual. It will come through the chair, and then I will deal with that question as to where it's answered, or indeed if members or myself answer it. Thank you very much. So we'll now ask our licensing officer, Mrs. Rogers, if she present her report, please. Mrs. Rogers, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is an application made by Admiral Bras Hampshire Limited for the renewal of the sex establishment licence held at 1 Yelverton Road for a further 12-month period. In addition, as we've heard, a variation to the second floor plan is also requested to bring it in line with the Licensing Act premises licence plan, which was dealt with by way of minor variation and granted on the 15th of April 2022, and the approval of a new window display. The premises have been operating as an adult lap dancing club for the past 17 years. They've had the benefit of a sexual entertainment venue licence, which permits the live performance of nudity following new legislation at the time, which came into effect on the 6th of April 2010. This was to give more control to local authorities and to residents over the operation of such premises. In October 2021, the applicant took over the premises and rebranded them as Temptation. The application made complies with the relevant legislation, and the necessary site and newspaper notices were published in accordance with that legislation. As a result, 5 objections were received. At the time of writing my report, I was in receipt of only 1. However, I can confirm that the other 4 were received within the consultation period. No objections were received from any of the responsible authorities as are identified under the Licensing Act, who were also consulted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. That was one thing I was actually going to clarify, but you kindly clarified it. At 4 in your report, you say at the time of lodging the renewal application request was made to vary the second floor plan, and then you want to say no representations were received from Dorset Police or Fire with regard to this application. So it's not just with regard to the vary the second floor plan, it's for the whole application per se. So thank you very much for that confirmation. That's extremely useful. So, members, we now move on to any questions on points of fact to Mrs. Rogers with regard to her report. Councillor Kelsey, do you have any?
If I may.
Thank you.
Mr. Rogers, just one point of clarification. I noticed that the new name of this premises is now Temptation Strip Club. Is there a difference between a strip club and a lap dancing club, please?
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. Councillor Rogers?
No, not as such. They come under the umbrella of the sexual entertainment venue licence, but obviously to have an SEV, you have that to have the performance of nudity. So it's whether they are nude or not.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Councillor Farr, do you have any questions or points of fact?
No, not at this stage.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Sutherland, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Rogers?
No questions, Madam.
Thank you very much. As you're acting on behalf of Mr. Weatherstone, are you content that I ask you with regard to representation of Mr. Weatherstone so that we're not duplicating questions? Is that fair?
Please, Madam. I think that's fair, yes.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Stockwell, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Rogers?
Yes, I do have a question, and I understand that I address that to you, Councillor Butt.
Question will be for Mrs. Rogers, and it's on points of fact with regard to the content of her report.
Yes, one point of fact is that the notice was given of the application, whereas in fact, at the time notice was published, the amendment of the window display didn't seem to be part of the application. And so I question whether correct notice was given of the window display part of the application.
Fair question. Thank you very much. Mrs. Rogers, would you answer, please?
I believe that the notice on the premises included the variation to the licence.
I'm sorry, would you say that again, Mrs. Rogers? We've got ambulances and goodness knows what's going on outside.
Sorry, the notice that was the public notice did refer to a variation of the licence.
Okay, so you have your answer, Mrs. Stockwell. It did in fact refer. Thank you very much. Councillor Northover, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Rogers? I'm sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. You wouldn't have heard me. My apologies.
Yeah, I just want to understand who. It says that it's Admiral Bars applying, but on the website for Club Temptation, it says that the trading name is Cucumber Bars Hampshire Limited. Is the company that is running it. So that's quite confusing. Who is the applicant? Why is a different company again running it? And also, I've looked at the notice yesterday, and it was just a notice for renewal. So I don't know if we can just double check that, because the the one that was advertised didn't say for a change, unless that was updated during the consultation or something. Thank you.
I think you have those. Thank you very much, Councillor Northern. I think you have those questions, Mrs. Rogers. Could you please stress them with regard
Yes,
to
so
the applicant's actual business name and clarification with regard to how many cases we're actually looking at today, whether it's just renewal or the other 2 points. Thank you.
So the licence holder is Admiral Bars Hampshire Limited, and as the holder of the licence, they have applied for the renewal. I'm not entirely sure where Cucumber comes from. With regard to the application today, it is for the renewal of the SEV, the approval of the updated plan for the second floor VIP area, which was changed for the Licensing Act purposes and granted, and it's just merely a formality to marry up the two plans, and for the approval of the window display, which was put up but has since been taken down when it was alerted to the applicant that they hadn't had approval yet. So they're bringing that here today to seek the approval for the window display. And that was all on the notice.
Okay, well, I think you've had your answer there, Councillor Northover. Everything does seem to be entrained correctly from Mrs. Rogers' answer. Thank you very much for your question. Councillor Dunlop, do you have a question on points of fact for Mrs. Rogers? Thank you.
I do, Chairman. I've got a number of questions, and I'm actually just trying to work out which ones relate directly to the presentation. And I have some that are more are around procedural and actions. I'm not sure. For example,
if you err or you stray a little, Councillor Dunlop, I'll advise
you'll
you.
tell me.
Please put your questions forward. Thank you.
You will tell me. That's fine. Just tell me if you want me to hold these. My first question was around the transfer of the licence when this was purchased. I think it was Spearmint Rhino, and I just wanted to know what is the procedure. As you know, I'm a former member of the licensing committee here and at Bournemouth, so I'm aware of the process we have for transferring premises licences. I'm not familiar, because it's not happened, a transfer as a sexual entertainment licence. What is the process that we go through there, i.e. what checks do we undertake to ensure, because it's quite the SEV licenses are heavily regulated with good reason. So how are we sure? What are our processes for ensure that this is a fit and proper person to hold a licence? That's my first question, please, Chairman.
Okay. With respect, I would expect those processes to be followed diligently. That's not specific to the actual application with regard to this particular item. If Mrs. Rogers feels that she would like to advise or give any information with regard to that, I'll be content. But other than that, this is a more generalistic question. Mrs. Rogers?
Yes, I mean, an application would be made, and we would consult with the police, and we would get all the necessary paperwork that was required, and checks would be made that way. So the checks are made, and then the application is granted or not, as the case may be, subject to the checks.
Thank you for that clarification. Your second question, Councillor Dunlop, I hope you're content with that.
Yeah, my second question is I'd like to know when licensing officers last paid a visit to these premises to inspect original records of signing of the code of conduct and the incident and refusals log, inspect the CCTV to ensure the management is recording any breaches of the dancers code of conduct. And that the booths are properly supervised. Having been a member of the committee, you know, I've been on these visits with officers, and just like to know when an inspection was last carried out at these premises, please.
Okay, so last regular visit carried out, Mrs. Rogers, thank you.
It was at 10 to 10 on the 10th of March this year. And I visited with the police. We did a multi-agency inspection, and that's when we discovered that some alterations had taken place on the second floor, and as a result of that, the minor variation was applied for and granted. I saw the customer code of conduct on display. There was no fire risk assessment or training that I was aware of at the time. As a result, I asked a fire officer to make a visit, and he did so. And they said that they were conversant with all emergency procedures, and that the door staff had received fire training, the dancers had received briefings on emergency procedures, and there was a healthy alarm system, and the fire risk assessment was all in place. I'm just looking at my notes now to see what else. A vulnerable persons policy had been written and filed away. The CCTV, there were some issues there, but they'd had a power cut, and there was a engineer coming out to sort that, and I believe that had been repaired. There was the drug safe, and everything seemed to be in order.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. It's a very comprehensive answer. I think the visit was carried out, and it was carried out thoroughly. Thank you very much. Councillor Dunlop, your third question?
My third question actually relates to the breaches that were reported. Would you like me to hold that, or do you want me to ask it now?
I'm not sure whether the breaches that would, it depends what angle you're asking the question from. If you're asking from an officer point of view, that's fine, but it may be that you'd want to ask those. It is? Because from an officer point of view, it may also be that you'd want to ask the applicant with regard to those breaches as well. But if this is from an officer's point of view, then you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. When the breaches were alerted to the council, to the licensing department by residents in the area, I think what I'm trying to do is to get an understanding of, I guess, the actions that were taken at that point, apart from writing letters. I just wondered, given that we were alerted to leaflets that were in the public domain, were advertisements for sexual services, that the window featured sexualised women, and there were reports of someone touting for business, not using appropriate language. I just wondered if we, a couple of considerations, did we consider that those particular breaches would also be undermining the premises licensing, the Licensing Act in particular, the prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm? Did we alert the responsible authorities? Did we then pay a visit to actually look at the window ourselves and get some advice, make a judgment on what we felt was going on here, sort of conduct an investigation? That's my question. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, that was a little long in its application, Councillor Dunlop. Mrs. Rogers, are you happy with, did you get the gist of that with regard to the points, which I think were about 3 points in there? Are you happy to answer?
Yes, I am. We had, the complaints came in from residents were dealt with by both myself and Mrs. Randall. Mrs. Randall also replied to another complainant, and we discussed the matter at our weekly wash-up meeting, which we have with all the responsible authorities. And by that time, I had contacted the applicant solicitor and drawn it to their attention, and they had acted immediately and put in place measures to prevent it from occurring again. I don't think we had a direct complaint to environmental health about a noise nuisance, so it wasn't dealt with in that respect. It was dealt with more reactively.
Thank you very much, Chairman. That's it for now. Thank you.
Councillor Dunlop, just for reference there, the statement from Mr. Weatherstone, no, it's not Mr. Weatherstone, but the statement from the applicant is quite long, and I think covers all those answers that you are looking for with regard to what occurred. But yes, it is. It's the witness statement from Mr. Weatherstone, And in there, many of those questions which you've raised were answered in detail. So you might want to refresh your memory with that for your reference. And your fourth question, Councillor Donovan, I'll make this the final one, if I may.
No, I'm good, actually. Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you for raising those. And just have reference to that statement. It gives more detail there with regard to your inquiry. Thank you very much. We now move on then to applicant who will make their representation. Mr. Sutherland, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. The premises has had a sexual entertainment, sex establishment license for a sex entertainment venue license for a number of years, but has operated in a similar way for I think it's 17 years. I think that's referred to in the report. My intention was to go through to a great extent Mr. Weatherstone's statement, which has been provided to the committee, also to objectors, and should obviously there be problems with internet or connections, then obviously you have the content, and I would commend the content of that statement to the members. Before sort of proceeding in detail, can I apologise to the committee? Obviously, I'm speaking to a laptop. The camera is fairly close to my face, but because my papers are all over me, all over the table, not all over me, and I have various different devices with information on, it may well be that when I'm talking that it appears that I'm not talking directly or that I have my head to the side. No disrespect is intended, and please bear with me as I try and gather that information in order to relay it to yourselves. In respect of this particular application, much has been made in respect of some of the changes to the premises. So it may be appropriate if I address those to start with. The second floor has changed and has been approved for the purposes of the premises license, and obviously we seek the formal approval of that change for the sexual entertainment venue license should that be renewed. Obviously I can deal with any...
Mr.
Sorry, Madam.
Not a problem. You are one of these gentlemen who don't draw breath, so it's difficult to try and intercede without being rude. I'm with deepest respect, I'm going to ask Mr. Lewin, please, to come in with regard to a point that's been raised. Thank you, Mr. Lewin.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been asked to give advice to the committee or subcommittee on the consultation point, and the public notice, I'm told, only mentions the application for renewal. But it seems to me that's not a problem, and the hearing can proceed today, because looking at Schedule 3 to the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982, there's no requirement to advertise or consult on a variation to the premises plan. And in terms of the display, the external display, that's a matter of condition, so that's not directly regulated by the Act at all. So it's my advice to the subcommittee is you can deal with it in your discretion.
I'm grateful to you. I'm also grateful to Councillor Kelsey, who raised that, because Mrs. Stockwell and Councillor Dunlop were concerned with regards to the appropriate advertisements, and so we can assure ourselves that they're all in training, they've all been done correctly. So moving on then, back to you, Mr. Sutherland, and I apologise for that interruption.
Thank you, Madam. Important interruption, and in fact I was going to cover the issue certainly in relation to the plans, but Mr. Lewin has dealt with it, so I won't focus on that anymore. Obviously, if there are any questions in respect of the second floor, then by all means, please ask questions. In respect of the use of the second floor, again, that's covered in Mr. Weatherstone's statement, and he deals with the persons who are on who have responsibility in relation to the operation on that floor, and security who are also operating on the floor, as well as the cameras covering each of the exclusive entertainment areas, which are displayed on a monitor. So again, not only is there personal supervision, but also everything is recorded and is viewable on the monitor. In respect of the changes to the window, I think that in relation to the displays, there is, I think, a difference in relation to what was believed was required. And I know that my client and myself do not necessarily accept the interpretation of the local authority. But the way that I would put that is that at this stage, it was always accepted that at a renewal, the conditions would be changing, and it would be necessary at the renewal stage that the council approved the visual aspect of the premises from outside, and as part of the process for the renewal, photographs are submitted in order for that approval to be sought. No disrespect was intended to the committee, and no intention to proceed in a manner which was against the understanding of the licensing authority in respect of the display. The current license which is in place certainly enables images to be placed on the window, and we had looked at that and considered that we were within the condition to change the imagery. That having been done, when it was highlighted to us that concerns were being raised, we removed it immediately, and obviously it's part of the application today. But you've also got within your papers, and I believe that it's at page 23, you've got the current images of the front of the premises, and if the committee do not approve any of the silhouettes, then obviously the premises will be viewed as at page 23. Turning to the renewal itself, the operation of the premises is covered in some detail by Mr. Weatherstone. The license at present covers 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and in reality, it opens on Wednesdays to Saturdays, and the hours generally it will open at 9 o'clock in the evening. People don't generally arrive straight on time, but it enables various different procedures and checks to be carried out before customers arrive. Most customers, I believe, arrive later, probably after 11 o'clock, midnight. And the numbers of customers, again, are covered by Mr. Weatherstone, dealing with the fact that the numbers are fairly limited. It's not, of course, everyone's type of entertainment, but it does cater for people of all types, all sexualities, all sexual persuasions. And Mr. Weatherstone covers that in some depth. with the Challenge 25 procedure, everybody who looks under 25 is asked for identity, and we only accept photographic identity. That's in order to gain admission to the premises. No one under 18, of course, is permitted to enter the premises. One of the key parts which is referred to by one of the objectors is in relation to I think a scantily clad female shouting out through a doorway. The reason I raise it at this stage is that one of the roles of the security is to ensure that no staff member, no performer is permitted to leave the premises in a manner where they're not appropriately dressed. Should a performer be looking to leave the premises, whether that's to smoke or otherwise, they're required to ensure that they're properly dressed. Generally, they have coats which they would be required to put on in order to go out and smoke if they wanted to. There are 2 coats available, and that means that obviously there would only be 2 performers outside smoking at a maximum, and generally less than that. Certainly no performer, member of staff would be permitted to do what is suggested has happened. I don't have any dates, so we've not really been able to look at it in any more depth, but certainly it's not permissible and would be prevented by security. Reference is made to obviously to the flyers and to the touting. Again, I would say that this application, the consideration of this application is unusual in the sense that I would say it is looking at 2 different regimes, and the transfer and the move from one to another. And so expectations in relation to the flyers are very different, I think, moving forward than the situation prior. So certainly under the old license, flyers were permitted with an appropriate license. The premises had the appropriate license and therefore had the flyers approved by the appropriate department at the council, and that's how they were operating. Again, once a complaint was made in relation to this, bearing in mind, of course, that we were aware that once the license was renewed, the conditions would change to prevent it. We stopped operating with the flyer system. That will continue. I've not sought to change the conditions as they will be once or should this license be renewed. Mr. Weatherstone, as part of the operation, goes through the codes of conduct and the welfare policy, and explains the responsibility which is shown to the dancers and to the staff, sets out the disciplinary procedure, and explains how the codes of conduct are enforced. And appropriate records are kept in relation to that, and you've heard from the visit from the officers that that was satisfactory. The Dancers Code of Conduct is set out by Mr. Weatherstone. The order of the Code of Conduct has changed, but that's really to reflect the policy of the committee, because policy sets out a minimum number of requirements, and you'll see from paragraph 3.37 that the start of the code of conduct now copies the policy numbering to make sure that everything is included as required by the committee. And then in addition covers some additional points. You'll note in the code of conduct, which reinforces, I think, the point that I was making, where it suggested that somebody who was scantily clad was leaning out of the premises or shouting out of the premises. If you look at P, which in fact is taken, as I say, from your policy, but has been added to make it clear as to what's required of the dancers. P requires that dancers shall not leave the premises or otherwise be visible outside the premises, including for smoking breaks, unless dressed in suitable attire. And the addition that we have added there is that we have the example outerwear consisting of coat or top and skirt or trousers. So lingerie or other performance costume is not visible. No advertising to be displayed on the dancer's clothing when worn outside the premises during breaks. So we have that covered. You'll then note there's some additional requirements that we've added for the dancers. And obviously the code of conduct is provided to each of the dancers and they're required to sign it. In relation to the objections, and my apologies in the sense that I can't relate specific objections to specific individuals at this moment in time, purely because obviously they're redacted to the extent that they're anonymous. The point that initially I would say is very much based upon an expert that we use, Adrian Studd, who is a former Chief Inspector of Police, and he gave evidence to the House of Commons Select Committee when they were originally looking at imposing or changing the law to cover sexual entertainment venues. And his expression very much was that such establishments were low risk from a public order perspective, no evidence that they, lap dancing clubs, cause any crime and disorder. Very rarely, they tend to be fairly well run. They tend to have a fairly high staff ratio to customers. The people who tend to go there tend to be a bit older, so they do not drink so excessively and cause the crime and disorder problems outside. The applicant accepts the conditions in their entirety. So I'm not looking at changing the conditions, whereas practices have been used in line with, or changes made, we believe, in line with the conditions as they were on the license. Of course, those conditions are changing, and should the committee grant this renewal, the new conditions are very clear, and of course we will operate with them. They require that obviously we have approval in relation to the external display, and obviously we're seeking that. You can see the images at page 24. The images which are set out at page 24 have been approved in different locations, but obviously it's for this particular committee to approve. I don't accept that they portray any sexuality at all. I think the persons are clearly people, but I don't accept that they are female. If somebody wishes to interpret it that way, then that's for them. But it's a matter for the committee whether they approve those images. If not, as I say, the display will be as it is now. Reference is made to a COVID-19 policy, and yes, there is one in place and is adhered to. There's reference to the name of the premises. We've removed references to Gentlemen's Club, part of general rebranding, and so that has been removed. There's reference to whether the premises should be called strip club. I think it is what it says it is, and makes it very clear to people the type of premises that it is, so that people don't go in inadvertently. So it's very, very clear. If, again, the name is considered not to be appropriate, it could be simply referred to as Temptation Club. It could be referred to as Temptation's Sexual Entertainment Venue Club, or SEV Club. Again, if the committee have a particular concern in relation to that, then that can be changed. In respect of the applicant, again, Mr. Weatherstone covers who the applicant is and how that business is divided. It's my experience dealing with many different operators around the country is that the license, the lease, may well be held in a company name, whereas the trading company, which is the details which are set out on the website, show that the trading name and who a person is purchasing items from or services from, then that's set out on the website. That company is different, but is constituted with Mr. Weatherstone being responsible for it as a director, and I would submit that there's nothing untoward in relation to that. I think finally there's reference, of course, to the area and the locality. Reference is made to the mosque, to the Islamic Centre and Central Mosque. I believe that that is approximately 150 metres or so away from the premises, on a different road. I would submit that and the other premises, which are premises and areas that are referred to, I think also Beale Place is specifically referred to, again, approximately around about 100 or so metres away from the premises. At the times when they mainly will be used, the premises is likely to be closed. If the committee felt that some degree of anonymity of the premises, as it were, was required to so that it didn't interfere or cause any issues with other premises, then of course the removal of the silhouette dancers may well achieve that with just the name of the premises. Just up the road, of course, also within the locality, there is the casino, which again is, I would submit, an adult type of premises. There's a number of bars and clubs also within the area. Again, I would say are all adult types of premises. So I think it's probably mixed use from that perspective. I'm sure there are many questions which members have, and then I shall hand over to that to the members and to the objectors and deal with any questions as they arise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sutherland. Just one point of clarification with regard to that offered condition, with regard to anonymity of the premises, as you put it. and the silhouettes, which are obviously of concern to the public. With the silhouettes there or without the silhouettes there, are you also suggesting that the Temptation Strip Club and Bar, that the description be removed, or is it just the silhouettes?
Certainly, Madam, I was focusing very much on the silhouettes at this stage. In relation to the name, it's a difficult one in the sense that what we're looking at doing is making it clear to everyone exactly what type of premises is, so that, and I think I've even heard councillors within Bournemouth make reference to the fact that they didn't want people just going in and not knowing what the premises were. So clearly, some reference to the type of premises I think is helpful. If offence is taken, the phrase strip club, then it is a sexual entertainment venue. That may be a preference. If no, or the committee prefer that there's no reference to it, then obviously it would just be called Temptation Club. Inside, or no one really gains entry to the premises without being met by security, as is clear from Mr. Weatherstone's statement. So at that stage, everybody who enters the premises is informed, of course, of the type of the premises. They will be asked whether they've been to such a type of premises before. The purpose of that is to ascertain what knowledge they have, what to expect. And of course, if somebody says, well, I've never been to a premises like this, then of course, the codes of conduct are expressed to them. It's also made clear to them, of course, that there is nudity and lap dance and pole dance taking place on stages. So whilst even if the name is removed, I think it's unlikely that anyone would just wander in off the street. There is no entertainment area on the ground floor. The ground floor is toilet facilities, reception area. So again, once they've gone through the security officer, they'll then go to reception and be signed in before they deal with entrance fees, etc., before they move to the first floor, which is where the bar and the entertainment is provided. So I'm very much in the committee's hands. As I say, it's I suppose to pinch the words of a well-known TV advert, it says what it is on the tin, and that's very much it.
Yes, that well-known varnish. Yes, it is a bit of a catch-22, but thank you very much for those offers with regard to conditions. So it's a matter for the subcommittee when we come to our deliberations with regard to those points. That's extremely helpful. Thank you. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Sutherland? Councillor Kelsey?
Not right now. You've actually just clarified the points I was going to ask about with the signs, etc. So I'll hold on for a moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Farr?
Yes, I have a question, please.
Thank you.
I know there aren't any representations from Dorset Police here today. Are there any incidents relating to the venue that have been reported to the police in the past, just to clarify? Thank you.
Thank you. So that's police-related incidents have only been reported. Thank you.
Sorry, I heard something. No, okay.
Sorry, did you hear the question? Councillor Farr was asking if there had been any police-related incidents that had been reported, and if so, could you share them with us, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I had heard the question. I then heard another comment afterwards, and I wasn't sure it was addressed to me, but I take it not. It's important, I think, for premises such as these, and I act for a number of such premises, and obviously Mr. Weatherstone operates a number of such premises. It's important that they have good relations with the responsible authorities, the police in particular, and also licensing authority. When incidents arise, yes, there will be contact with the police. It's important that that's maintained. I'm not aware of any specific instance, but of course we're in regular contact with the police. We are we look to try and meet with the responsible authorities on a regular basis. And again, should the license be renewed, I would certainly, look at meeting both with your licensing officer and also the police, just to make sure that if there are any particular issues that we're not aware of, that we can address them fairly quickly.
Okay, thank you, and we'll take that on advisement. Are you content with that answer, Councillor? I have a few questions. One of them was a point you made about dancers coming out for some fresh air, and that 2 coats are available. Is it just that there are 2 coats available because the club restricts only 2 dancers outside? Or if more coats are available, would we end up with more dancers outside taking some fresh air or having a smoke? It just seemed an odd statement. Thank you.
Madam, yes, I really was looking at addressing this this allegation about scantily clad woman who appears to come out of the premises, and that's really the point that I was looking to address. The situation is that we obviously have to control people both inside the premises and outside of the premises. One of the ways that we find it helpful to control outside of the premises is by restricting the number of performers or staff who may be outside. And that's why the limit is on the 2 coats, as it were, because that limits at any one time the number of performers who may be outside. I think that's what I meant. If I didn't make that clear, then my apology.
No, that's fine. Thank you for that. And the other matter was the flyer system. Is it your intention to repeat that? Because you had permission from Highways on the previous occasion, although the content perhaps was somewhat questionable. But could you clarify with regard to use and distribution of flyers? Thank you.
Madam, the previous or the current license that's in place permits such flyers to be used. And it was on that basis that the premises was operating. It wasn't on the basis that they were looking to breach any rule or condition. The current license permits it, and therefore we had sought to operate within the terms of the current license by distributing. The flyer itself had been approved, as I say, by the appropriate department in the council. There is no intention, if I can make it absolutely clear, there is no intention of operating in breach of the condition which will, should the license be renewed, will be imposed by this committee. It's one of your standard conditions, and I expect that it will go onto the license. I've not asked that it doesn't, and of course we will comply with that condition, as we will comply with all conditions on the license.
Thank you. That's extremely useful. The other matter was with regard to dealing with any breaches. That's at 319 of the statement from Mr. Weatherston. And it says, in presence of any deep breaches, the dancer's given an opportunity. It seems a great leap there. There are other employees. So why would it just be a dancer that might be in breach of something? Or was it specifically to that breach? Because it seems a little ambiguous, that. I'd like to think that all employees, whatever the situation was of any breach. So could I have an explanation, please?
Certainly, madam. And again, my apologies, because I think it's probably my clumsy drafting. The issue with the sexual entertainment venue license, often the focus is on the performer and ensuring that the performer complies, obviously, with the performer's code of conduct. And it was really that which I think that particular paragraph is looking at addressing. Of course, the staff have their own standards and rules that they have to comply with. it is, I think, easier in relation to staff because they are staff, that there is a formal disciplinary process in relation to performers because they contract directly with the premises. Then it's more of a contractual obligation, and it's a contractual working through. To describe it, and I know some operators have great difficulty in accepting the phrase disciplinary process, simply because it seems to suggest it is something that it is not. We would probably look at more as a contractual obligation, a contractual process, so that if they breach the terms of their contract, which require them to obviously comply with the codes of conduct, then that's when the procedure will kick in. It gives them the opportunity of explaining behaviour. It may be that there's a misunderstanding. It may be that there's a lack of understanding of the interpretation of a particular part of the code. I'm never cease to be amazed in so many different ways. So it's about trying to be fair in that process. Of course, there's a separate procedure which is very detailed for the staff.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And just one more question, then I'm going to bring in Councillor Kelsey so that you hear a different voice. It was made quite clear in the objections, although I don't know who each objector is with regard to their objection, and we'll ascertain that at a later stage. It'll be helpful. You say in here at 324, or Mr. Weatherston does, there's nothing to prevent females coming into the premises on their own. Now, there seems to be that that is felt not to be the case. So could you clarify, please?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Madam, yes, I think we were somewhat surprised by it. Not sure where this has come from. Certainly our experience is that females tend to not come into the premises on their own, and that they tend to come in groups of at least two, but often more, and often couples will come in. I'm not sure where the idea that you can't come in on your own as a female has come from.
So
obviously females.
This is nothing that the security staff are advising
No.
frequenters of the premise. No. So
certainly nothing on our part on that. If as I say, we're not sure where it's come from, but it's clearly not the case.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Kelsey, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a hand up for Mr. Lewin. Mr. Lewin, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was asked to look at this point, among others, before the hearing, and I did see reference on the club's website to this entry policy, and it appeared to me that it was discriminatory. But I think so. I think we do need clarification whether that is a policy being operated or not.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Lewin. Yes. So just to clarify, then, on the website. What does it actually say, Mr. Lewin? Could you advise us as to the wording?
I have a feeling I was just having a look, but I think someone might have just shared the link. Let's have a look.
Okay, and I will see that where.
That's in the general meeting chat. I think Councillor Northover might have just sent it.
Yes, I have chat. How about 8 screened in front of me? And then on the right-hand side, are women allowed into the club?
Yes, in the FAQs.
But women accompanied by partners or small groups of women rights set forth. So single women are not allowed into the club. That's quite clear then. So we'll need to address that. But thank you for that clarification.
Madam, if it's there, then it needs changing because it's not how they're operating. So we can change it on the website.
Indeed, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take that as an offer of redress. Thank you, Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of quick questions, really. Do you have, or what are your checks that you put in place for the rights to work for your dancers? And do you do any specific DBS checks for any of your staff to make sure that they are, sort of fit and proper people to work in these sorts of premises?
In respect of the right to work, then we require from every performer before they're able to take on. We follow the guidance, obviously, from the Home Office. So we require a passport, and if an individual has a foreign passport, then we would ask for the link, the code, which would give us access to be able to see that the person then has the right to work. So that's the procedure that we would that we follow. If a person doesn't produce their passport, then they're not able to work. It's just never progressed any further, and that will apply whatever nationality. If they don't produce a passport, we just don't proceed with it. In relation to, I'm sorry, Councillor, I was making a note of what I needed to do in relation to the website. So I think there was a second part to your question, and I may have missed it. So could I ask you just to repeat it for me? Thank you. My apologies.
No problem at all. It's just in regard, do you actually do any specific DBS checks on members of staff? Obviously, your SIA door staff will have been checked. That goes without saying. But just in relation to other people working there, bar staff, etc.
We're not required to do DBS checks because of the nature of the work that we're in. In fact, I think we're not able to do the full DBS checks. What is required as part of the process by your council is that those people who are managing in the premises or involved in the process of the control of the premises, then they are required to obtain the sort of basic criminal check to confirm that they have no criminal record or any concerns from that point of view. You're right about the security, of course, but bar staff wouldn't be required to produce any evidence that they don't have any convictions. They are asked as part of their interview process, but it isn't something that that we follow through in relation to bar staff.
Thank you.
Yeah,
yes, of course, Councillor.
And just a follow up, do you do any form of routine drug testing for your staff at the premises? And if so, could you just briefly explain, please? Thank you.
Yes, as part of the, sorry, Councillor, I interrupted you. Wasn't my intention. I thought I was on mute, in fact, at that stage. Yes, there is routine drug testing, which is carried out with staff and also performers. Part of the performers contract includes a consent for that to happen. And it doesn't happen frequently, but it does happen from time to time that a performer or a member of staff will be subject to a search in order to check whether there's any illegal substances which they have on their person. There is no drug test that we formally require. We don't do a urine test or any blood test as such with staff. It's purely based on searching.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland.
Thank you very much. Councillor Paul, did you have anything?
No more questions at this stage.
Okay, thank you. I just have one last one. I think it's the elephant in the room. It's the Facebook pages issue over the leaflets. Could you clarify, please? In 4.6, Mr. Weatherson says, in respect of the Facebook pages, I do not accept they were a problem. But in any event, they have been removed and the account ended. Could you expand on that, please?
I think the suggestion, as I recall, was that the Facebook pages had a picture of two females, either bikinis or underwear, and they were touching. And I think the suggestion was that it was either misleading in the sense that because we had an SEV license and therefore we were entitled to have nudity, that this didn't require an SEV license because they weren't nude, and whether that created any misleading. And then I think the other aspect of it was that, in fact, they were touching. When, of course, part of the rules, can I just apologise? My dog has decided that to join in. I'm really sorry.
Absolutely fine.
Sorry, it's thrown me a second. So I think the other aspect of this was touching, and that as there was no touching permitted during a performance, that again that could be misleading. And I think that's the point that we don't accept is misleading in that sense. The Facebook pages, to avoid any further confusion and argument in relation to it, the Facebook pages have just been removed and the account closed. So we're not looking at doing any promotion via Facebook.
That's quite dry. That's quite complete. Thank you for that confirmation with regard to that aspect, because I know it was a concern to many of our objectors. Thank you very much. So if no further questions then from the panel, we'll move on to our objectors. So Mrs. Stockwell, any questions for Mr. Sutherland, please? Mrs. Stockwell, if questions have been raised and they've been answered, can you move on to new points, please? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Could I just ask Councillor Butt, I was asked to give an estimate of how long I would take addressing you. Does that come later, or is this just questions?
No, yes, this is your opportunity to ask questions of the applicant.
Thank you.
In the same vein that the members have. Your presentation is next on. Okay.
Thank you.
This is your time to ask questions of the applicant.
Thank you. I have just 5 points. One is on the sex establishment policy, which was adopted last November and therefore applies to this application, that it does insist at Appendix E21, I expect Mr. Lewin's listening to this, E21, that the variation does be advertised in public. So that's my first point. I don't know if Mr. Sutherland wants to answer that now.
That's more of a statement, isn't it, than a question? So did you want that to be put back to Mr. Llewellyn for his comments?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, the questions are actually for the applicant, but I will allow it for clarity. Mr. Lewin?
Thank you. Shall I carry on with my points or wait for Mr. Lewin to speak?
Mr. Lewin, did you want some time to consider?
Yes, I think that would be helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, your second question then. Thank you, Mr. Lewin. Thank you, Mrs. Stockwell. If you'd like to continue with your second.
Yes, my second point is that for 3 to 5 months, we've already heard, possibly 3 months if the business started in Christmas, possibly 5 months if it was when you took over the lease, that there was no fire risk assessment in place. Now, Mr. Weatherstone's very experienced, and the requirement for a fire assessment has been law, on my understanding, since 2015. Can Mr. Sutherland explain his client applicant's actions in not having a fire assessment in place and people working there for 3 to 5 months?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Sutherland.
Madam, I think that I think the initial point that I would probably say in relation to this is that this is a matter at the end of the day with the fire authority, and we have liaised with the fire authority and satisfied them completely in relation to it. I think I'm not sure as to the circumstances of the visit carried out by the officers. But as soon as it was highlighted, then it was put into a documentary form. I think staff were aware of fire procedures. I'm just not sure that it was put into the format that it should have been at that particular time.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Mrs. Rogers, did you have any comment on that with regard to this? I believe, did this happen at your visit or was a previous visit? Do you have any comment as to this, because with regard to your responsibility with regard to the premise in this regard?
It was discovered at the visit, therefore.
Which bit? Sorry, Mrs. Rogers, which visit was it?
The one in March.
Thank you.
So the change of layout was discovered at that time, and as a result of that, the application was made to remedy it.
And that's normal process. When something's identified not to be appropriate, it's then dealt with and remedied.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Your third question. Thank you, Mr. Stockwell.
Oh, well, I don't feel that's been answered, the second question. My point was that there hadn't been a fire assessment on my understanding of what Mrs. Rogers said, that there hadn't actually been a fire assessment in place at the time, not that it was to do with the change of the second floor.
No, there was a fire assessment. When I asked for it, it wasn't able to be located, but it was in fact on the premises, and the fire officer was able to see it, and it was dated November 2021, because they had taken over from Spearmint Rhino in October 21.
I see. I misunderstood you when you were speaking.
Sorry, it was just on the evening, the person didn't know where it was, basically.
Sorry, Mr. Stockwell, I thought you had ascertained that, so my apologies, but
yeah.
Now clear. Thank you. Could I have your third question?
Of course, and I also apologise for cross-questioning instead of going through
not
you.
Not at all. We're all here. We're all here to find out the information. So
right.
Don't feel like that at all. You're more than welcome.
Okay, my next question to Mr. Sutherland is he aware that can he confirm that his witness, Adrian, the expert witness that he quoted, Adrian Studd, is actually from the Metropolitan, who are currently in effectively special measures for various reasons, including issues regarding safety of women and girls. And therefore his views on there not being much of a problem around strip clubs might be a little different when compared to current concerns over the safety of women and girls.
I'm not sure that question's relevant, to be honest with you, as to what the state of affairs is now and what the state of affairs might have been when that advice was sought. So I will look to Mr. Lewin, please. Could you so advise, because I don't feel that's relevant. It may be, and I will stand corrected. Mr. Lewin. Oh, okay. Mrs. Stockwell, I'll get an answer to that for you. When Mr. Lewin comes back, I'll just ask, he's obviously looking for the answer to your other question at the minute. So what we'll do is we'll revisit that question in a minute when Mr. Lewin returns to us. And if you'd like to address your fourth question, thank you.
Thank you. We've heard from Mr. Sutherland that the business is divided, that you're expected to licence one business, the applicant, for provision of sexual services, and yet another business is advertising the sale of those sexual services through the sexual entertainment. Could Mr. Sutherland please clarify this?
Okay, Mr. Sutherland, I don't quite understand the question, but you may be better formed. Did you want the question put in a different way or put again? I'm not quite sure what's being asked, but you may be.
Madam, what I will do is that I will probably start, and then I will hand over to Mr. Weatherstone, because I think he's probably the expert in relation to it. Certainly, from my experience, in relation to premises licenses, SEV licenses, it's not unusual for the license to be held by one company and the premises operated by another. I think a classic example probably is a lot of premises licenses, of course, will be held by pubcos or a landlord and are not held by the operators at all. And I think that's, I suppose, what I would say in relation to it. In this particular case, the company that is holding the license is a company that's operated by Mr. Weatherstone, and he is in control of it. So there's no hidden individuals, as it were. It's purely a structure for how the business is operated, how many businesses are operated in the hospitality industry. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Weatherstone. I don't know whether there's anything you would want to add to that, Mr. Weatherstone.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherstone. If you'd like to add to that.
Thank you, Madam. Yes, I'd just reinforce what Mr. Sutherland says. We have a number of these premises. They're all operated in the same way, where we have a company that owns the lease, the freehold, and the premises license and the SEV. And as Mr. Sutherland says, this does date back to when some of the premises were held by people like Punch or Heineken or companies like this, which has since changed. And then we have a day-to-day trading company, which I wholly own. I'm the shareholder and director of, as the other company. So as Mr. Sutherland said, it's not about hiding individuals. I'm the only owner, director, shareholder of any of these companies. And we have a management agreement and a legal agreement between the two companies that Mr. Sutherland has prepared for us to enable the day-to-day trading company to operate and run the premises, operate the premises. And it's purely for that structure, and also for a tax efficiency perspective as well.
Thank you very much. So you run an umbrella system, which is understandable. Mr. Lewin, I hope you found the answer to the first question. In that time of you seeking that answer, Mrs. Stockwell asked another, and it was with regard to Adrian Studd, the police officer of which advice is given, and she had concerns that apparently the Metropolitan Force of which he was connected to was now in special measures, and what impact that had, if any, on this particular application. I was concerned that at the time of the advice was not the time of now, and whether that was contemporaneous or not. So your advice would be useful.
Of course.
There. So question one in the first instance, just to refresh, with regard to this variation, are we up to speed on this or not? Thank you.
Yes. So as I understand it from Mrs. Rogers, the council made a mistake in preparing the public notice and missed off the reference to a variation application. And she's shown me a copy of the newspaper advert published at the request of the applicant, which does mention the variation. So I'm satisfied that the policy only refers to steps that the applicant has to take. So it does appear to me that the applicant did what the policy requires. So I think my original advice still stands. On the second question about Mr. Studd, I am a little bit familiar with Mr. Studd. I understand he retired from the Met some time ago, but even then, I'm not aware, and there's no suggestion of anything personal to him that would affect his judgment, his competence, etc. So I think it's a matter of, for you, what weight you give. He's obviously not, as far as I can see, provided any direct evidence to the subcommittee apart from that one quotation from a statement he made more than a decade ago to Parliament. So it's up to you, councillors, what you decide to make of that.
Very useful. Thank you very much indeed. And Mrs. Stockwell, your fifth and final question?
A fifth point here, that there are employees at this premises. My understanding was that in this industry that they're usually self-employed, and I wonder if Mr. Sutherland can clarify whether everybody working in these premises is actually covered by all the requirements and all the policies and so forth and what they're supposed to do, or whether it's just employees.
Okay, confirmation there of the protections which are provided, please, Mr. Sutherland. Thank you.
In relation to compliance codes and I suppose auditing and ensuring compliance, all of those provisions apply to any person who is working at the premises. Are some people employed and some self-employed? Then generally speaking, the answer to that is yes, as is the case in many businesses. Even for my own, as I operate in the legal field, although am working for Keystone Law, I operate as a consultant for them and am self-employed. This is not unusual. In this particular industry, then the performers, whether they be male or female, the performers generally are self-employed. They're employed as entertainers to provide a service to the particular premises. And that's what applies here. That relationship is governed by the contract that's in place, and obviously the contract incorporates the codes of conduct to ensure that there is compliance and that the performers know exactly what's required of them. I'm not sure that that's exactly what was being asked of me, but I think that's the best way I can do of describing it.
Yes, I think what Mr. Stockwell might have been looking for was, that there was confirmation that protections were in place for all people. Mr. Weatherstone, if you'd like to add, thank you so much, Councillor Kelsey. Mr. Weatherstone, like to come in?
Yes, I can confirm that currently the SIA staff are employed by as an external company, but I have 6 full-time employees. In fact, I have the payroll in front of me, excluding Naresh and myself. So that's 6 full-time employees within the company, within the business in Bournemouth.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So thank you for your questions, Mrs. Stockwell. We'll now move on and we'll ask Councillor Lisa Northover. Do you have any questions for Mr. Sutherland? And can they be new points, please?
Yes, I do.
Councillor Northover?
Yes, thank you. My first question is just about the company. Earlier on, I asked about who the company is that is going to be running the club, and I said it said on the website it's Cucumber Bars, and then that was refuted. So I just want to be sure. I'm just going to put the website in there. It's at the bottom of the front page. I hope you can just quickly confirm that I'm correct there, that is what it says there. Is that right?
That was, with respect, Councillor Northover, that was difficult to hear because we had so much traffic going past.
Okay.
Mr. Sutherland, did you hear the question?
I did, Madam, but I don't.
It's a point of clarification, I think.
Yeah, and I think it was suggested that I'd refuted it, and I've certainly never refuted that the operating company is a different company from the license holder. I've accepted that right from the start. We've explained it, and my answer would be the same. That it's a recognised structure across the industry.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that that is the case from your website again. So the next question I have again is about the company names.
Councillor Northover, how many questions? Sorry, before you go ahead, how many questions do you have?
4.
4, thank you.
Yeah.
Would you like to ask your second question?
Because I'm concerned about whether or not the applicant is a person that is suitable, because I fear he has a lack of respect for women. And the reason I'm saying this is because other companies associated, sister companies like this Cucumber, then there's the Admiral one, Strawberry and Wizard Sleeve, which I think are all connected, all have names which are slang for very derogatory names and references about women. And I just wondered if perhaps he could explain what Wizard Sleeve actually means. I can just put...
I'm sorry, Councillor Northover, is this new information that you haven't shared with us? Because this is difficult for us to ascertain if we don't have that information in front of us. Mrs. Cutler,
I've put the names of his other businesses into the chat so you can see.
Yeah. Councillor Northover, can I stop you there, please? Can I just stop you there, please?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Can I just ask Matt with regard to this information? Obviously, we were open to see and listen to all information, but it's when it's rather landed on us like this, it's very difficult to ascertain, and it's probably best as statements like lack of respect are better put, because if it proves that your statement is incorrect, that's a difficult situation to be in, Councillor Northover. So I would just caution you there. Mr. Lewin, could you advise, please? Thank you.
I wonder if there's a way that I could advise you councillors in closed session, or at least initially, and then maybe I could confirm the advice in public session. Maybe we could go on to the chair's chat to discuss.
Yes, I think so, indeed. Thank you. Okay. Whilst you do that, then, Councillor Northover, would you like to put your next question?
Okay. If a single woman is now allowed into the club, how is she kept safe? How is she not harassed by customers who would confuse her for a dancer?
Okay. I think we have policy there, but Mr. Sutherland or Mr. Weatherstone, if you'd like to answer that, probably Mr. Weatherstone, because you're in the club and dealing with those club matters all the time.
Yes, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer because whilst we encourage all people, if it was a mistake on the website, we would happily welcome single females in. It would be the job of the security staff and the employees to make sure she was maintained safely and not harassed. Can we ensure her safety? Yes, as much as possible. But a single woman on her own may be subject to people going up to her. That's just the nature of the business. But obviously, we would do everything we can with the staff on hand to ensure that she was protected and maintained safely at all times.
What I would also probably add to that, Madam, is that from my experience in dealing with this type of premises around the country, is that often women, if they do go to premises on their own, it doesn't often happen, but if they do go to premises like this on their own, then it's usually because they're less likely to be approached. The way that the premises generally operate is that customers would sit at tables, and generally speaking, the customers wouldn't mingle between their tables. So it's unlikely, I think, that a woman going into the premises is actually going to be approached by a customer. But clearly the ratio of staff security to individuals is very high. And so if there is any concern, unlike where if you were at a pub or a late night bar where the ratio of staff to customers is much less, anything is picked up much quicker, I think, and can be dealt with much quicker. And waiting staff, management, security would be able to step in if required.
Thank you indeed. We're just trying to check with regard to, apparently this information may have been shared by email on Monday. I don't know if I had it or not. I don't recall it. I don't know if the other members recall receiving an email on Monday. No. So
Chair, if that's right, I would suggest that with respect to Councillor Northover, we deal with that issue any further. Just to be clear to everybody, this was an issue that I believe Mrs. Stockwell raised on Sunday, and obviously we looked at this on Monday, or I looked at it on Monday, and officers looked
yes, we're with you, Mr. Glenn. Well, that email we did not read specifically.
Okay.
We did not read, and we did not involve ourselves or take any part, and that's because we didn't better our discretion, and that's why one of our members isn't here today, because indeed he is. So ergo, no, we have not seen it. But I would like to move on if that advice is, if you're happy with that. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So you have your fourth question.
Yep.
Or were we still in the throes of answering your third, Councillor Northover?
No, I think I'm on to the fourth now.
You're content. Okay, your fourth question, Councillor Northover. Thank you.
It's whether or not the the proposed window display that's in the papers still has the porn links. So is it still proposed to put those porn links onto the window?
The window display will be as set out in your papers. So it's the window display at page 23. So there's no web pages or websites referred to, because the new policy is in place, and because should the committee grant the license, should they renew the license and grant it, the conditions will change. And I've not sought to change those conditions, then I can't seek to change the window display without the approval of the committee. That is accepted. I think different rules applied under the current license. Certainly that's how we'd interpreted it, but it's clear that going forward the rules are that the window display will be as approved by the committee, and it can't be changed without approval from the council.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm not sure if that was...
Sorry, Councillor Northover, did you have a fifth question?
No, I'm not clear, because the proposed window display in the pack has the porn websites on it in the picture. So is that definitely what is proposed? If you agree that today, are they permitted then to put those websites back on the window?
Right, we will, let's look at these concerns for you, Councillor Northover. Are we looking at page 24?
Yes.
We are. So if we look at page 24, right. So
the councillor makes a fair point, I think, Chair.
It's the website address on top of stunners.com, is it? Is that yes. What you're talking about? Councillor Northover?
There's 3 websites there that I would say are all unsuitable.
Chair, if it's
Mr. Sutherland, your comments?
Thank you, Chair. I think that's a fair point, and I actually hadn't picked up on that, and it was my mistake. I think the request, I think, for the committee is only in relation to the silhouettes, and I had indicated that, I think, as we were going through the application. It isn't for the for the websites, but in any event, Madam, if you approve the window, then it would be with the silhouettes. If you don't approve the window, then of course it's as it is at the moment.
That rather leaves us in a difficult situation, doesn't it?
Sorry, Madam, in what way?
Moment. Okay, thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Yes, okay, I'm now clear in that it says as to which window display is to be approved, and that is a matter for the subcommittee, Councillor Northover. So you're going to have to leave that one with us, but we've heard the point made about the web addresses. Thank you, Councillor Northover.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Dunlop, your opportunity now to ask questions of the applicant. Could you give me an idea as to how many questions you may have?
I think I've got 4.
That's absolutely fine. You're all entitled to 4.
Am I okay with 5? Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Councillor. No, don't have 5 for the sake of it. You're entitled to your 4. But go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I do appreciate your indulging everybody this morning. I wonder if I could just say something about we've had just on the statement. I have to say that we've only received the statement this morning, so thank you to the licensing officers for sending it across in the last hour. But Mr. Webb, I'm so sorry. Sorry, I do beg your pardon. I nearly called you Mr. Weatherspoon. I do apologise. Mr. Weatherstone has gone through excessive lengths to obviously demonstrate his experience, particularly in the sex industry and owning these 4 other clubs. So I think that some of those questions, and I don't want to speak for Councillor Northover, actually go to the suitability of the applicant for holding a sexual entertainment venue licence. And that's my first question, if I may. Mr. Sutherland referred to a bit of confusion about whether they could put flyers out or whether they couldn't put flyers out. I think that's somewhat of a red herring, Chairman. I think the issue is the distribution of material that is directly related to sexual services, the fact that we're advertising porn sites, and the fact that you can go onto this website and there's no adult warning, as in fact there isn't in any of them. I've literally whizzed through all these sites this morning, given that the applicant has all this experience, why and has these interest in these 4 other clubs, and Mr. Sutherland referred to standard conditions, which we know are fairly standard, why there has been disregard to those matters. And if you recall earlier, I drew attention to the fact that I drew attention to the Licensing Act that talks about the prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. So what it appears to me that there are there's been disregard shown for people's sort of I guess I'm going to try to say public safety, but disregard to children and disregard to those things, and disregard that they really shouldn't be promoting material like this. And I'd like to know why that's been done. Why that disregard?
Okay, thank I'll ask Mr. Winston if you'd like to come in to answer that. He's indicating. I'll refer to you, Mr. Sutherland, if necessary. Thank you, Mr. Winston.
Thank you, Madam. So I'd like to address the suitability. I mean, the flyers, we, as Mr. Sutherland has indicated, we believe that we were acting in the old licence terms. The suitability of the flyers, I think, is the discussion, and what we may feel is suitable and somebody else may feel suitable is obviously the discussion. So I would refute what the lady is saying with regard to that. In return to the websites, we advertise 3 websites, one of which is the club website, which we advertise for all of our premises on the premises. This gives information about the opening hours, the entry requirements, etc., etc. As far as I'm aware, there's no pornographic images on this website. The second website, stunners.com. This is a competitor site to OnlyFans, one of the biggest websites in the world, one of the most successful websites in the world. It's about creators and content creators and interaction with their fans. You have to become a member with the specific creator for there to be anything untoward. So I refute that that's a pornographic website. The third site, Strip VR, I've just logged on and you have to accept that you're 18 years or over to enter it. So again, I think the lady has that wrong completely. I've just logged on. It is my website. This is around a virtual reality strip club. And it's about a membership program where you pay your credit card fee and you can watch girls do a virtual strip. So, you know, my suitability to run these clubs, you know, I do get a little bit upset when somebody says that. I've been in this industry for a long time. We've never had a license revoked. We've never had a major problem. We look after our customers. We look after our employees. We look after the people that work for us. And, you know, this is a business that not is everybody's cup of tea, but it is a business I'm in and I have been in a long time. And you know, I'm not saying that I don't occasionally make mistakes. I'm not perfect, but I would refute my suitability to operate these establishments.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Mr. Witherspoon, and please be assured that the questions are put in good faith just to tease out those answers and those confirmations. It's in no way meant to insult you in any way, shape or form. I'm sure that Councillor Dunlop would not have wished to have done that, and that wasn't her intention. Councillor Dunlop, thank you. Your second question. Oh, Mr. Sutherland, did you want to come in?
Only, if I may, Madam, it was really only just to add that the websites are operating lawfully. There are changes afoot in respect of websites and how they operate. Obviously, they will need to comply with the rules as and when they change, and the regulator for that, I believe, will be somebody different other than the local authority, but failure to comply results in extremely high financial penalties. So I would only put it to that extent.
That's useful to be reminded of those changes due in law. Thank you. Councillor Dunlop, your second question. Thank you.
Yes, but may I just respond, Chairman? I'm not looking at any private sites at all. I've simply looked at the publicly accessible websites for the venues that Mr. Weatherstone is telling us he either owns or has an interest in. None of them are restricted by access to 18. There are images popping each other and there are videos of the same. So that's what I'm looking at. And I really don't appreciate Mr. Weatherstone becoming aggressive with me and referring to me as the lady because I'm asking legitimate questions. But I shall move on to my second question. Thank you.
With that said, Councillor Dunlop, I think now that you have referred to this, Mr. Lewin, do you feel that the members should look to this ourselves to satisfy ourselves, because clearly if images are available, 18 is not required. I think we need to satisfy ourselves that that's the case while we're in public hearing. I'll be advised.
Members, this matter for you. As far as I can tell, these are, as Councillor Dunlop says, publicly accessible websites. I don't think there's any dispute that they're owned or operated, or Mr. Weatherston has an interest in those websites. So if you wanted to, and assuming the council's internet filters allow you to, then I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, one moment.
What I would emphasise is that
yes, it may be a problem that we might not be able to access that type
yes.
of web page on our council equipment. So that I didn't think of that. Of course, I've got my own laptop here as well. So are you able to access them, Mr. Lewin?
Yes, I have had a look. And
your thoughts?
Well, I can understand why people would take objection to them, but I have to say I agree with Mr. Weatherston that they may not be everybody's cup of tea, but they don't appear to be unlawful. And well, I can't really say much more than that. I don't.
Okay, thank you for that advice. We are grateful. We will add the required weight as appropriate. Thank you. Your second question, Councillor Dunlop. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
I'm sorry, Councillor Dunlop, can you hear me? I'll shout a bit louder.
I can't. No, you're all right. That's really faint. These little technical hitches, don't they? These technology, isn't it, with the technical hitches? I'd just like to draw. I'd like to ask a question about Mr. Sutherland's assertion that these images on the window are gender neutral. Just a straw poll at a meeting I was at yesterday with 20 people. I said, do you think that's a gender neutral image? If not, what do you think it is? And obviously 20 people said it's an image of a naked woman. So I'd like to know if Mr. Sutherland doesn't believe this is an image of a naked woman, what he thinks that this gender neutral person is doing on their knees. What is it that he thinks it is, or it's portraying? What is this person on their knees doing if it's not a sexual image?
Thank you, Councillor Dunlop. Mr. Weatherston or Mr. Sutherland, either of you like to answer that? Or the question was put to Mr. Weatherston, I believe.
Madam, if I start, and I'm sure that if Mr. Weatherston wishes to add anything, I'm sure he will come in. Certainly the images have been used at other premises around the country. There has not been any objection and have been approved by other councils. That's not saying anything other than statement of fact that's the case. I look at the images, I accept that they are of people, but I don't accept that they're of automatically female. I think that they are gender neutral. I think people are assuming that that because of the way that they look, that they are women. I would say that that's an assumption that is being made. They portray, I suppose, individuals who may be dancing or performing in some way, and I would leave it at that. It is a matter for the committee whether they wish those images or are prepared. Let me change that, I think, whether they consent or agree to those images going on the window. As I've said, Councillor, if the committee are not with us, then the window will look as page 20, and I can put it no higher than that. I think the committee will form their own views in relation to the silhouettes. I say that they're not. But that reflects, I suppose, my experience. I think they could be male, they could be trans, who knows? I just don't know.
Okay, and I think with that said, Mr. Sutherland is quite correct. We will form our own view, Councillor Dunlop, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. Would you like to continue with question 3, please?
I would, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Sutherland also referred to adult venues nearby. I'd just like to know which particular premises he is referring to as adult venues.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland?
There's obviously the casino, which is almost next door to the premises, and there are a number of bars, late night bars in the area, which I would submit are adult.
How many? One, two.
Thank you for that confirmation. And question 4, Councillor Dunlop, if you're content with that answer, I think it's what it is. There is a casino and there are some late night bars, which both would be frequented only by adults.
I think the number is very, very small, Chairman, actually, and I think Mr. Sutherland is trying to assert there's lots of them, which there aren't. But my 4th question, however, is what is the ratio of male to female performers, please, in the club?
At this particular time, at this particular club, the only performers that have performed there so far are female.
Not surprising that people think the images are female. However, my 5th question is that one of the we've received a number of complaints from nearby residents, and whilst Mr. Sutherland has gone to great extent to explain that it couldn't possibly happen that a performer or someone associated with the club could be outside touting, we've had a very detailed description of someone scantily dressed in a red wig touting 2 men passing by on the other side of the pavement, asking if they'd like to come inside and get some pussy. And I just really would like to ask Mr. Sutherland, does he believe that the residents in that area who complained about this are not perhaps telling the truth?
Mr. Sutherland, if you'd like to attempt to answer it, thank you.
I can't say whether they're telling the truth or not, madam, because I think the difficulty is that I've not been given any specifics in relation to dates and times. And the issue on something like this is it's black and white. If it's happened, then if I'm given a date and time, it will be on CCTV. I can take appropriate action. It shouldn't have happened if it's happened. We don't accept it's happened simply because from the information we've got and from the very brief investigation I've been able to carry out on that brief information, it said that that would not happen. Certainly the rules are in place, the codes are in place, everything is in place to ensure it should not happen. And without some specifics, it's very difficult for me to investigate it, because I would have CCTV. I would be able to say, okay, yes, it happened. This is what will happen as a consequence, that somebody's done something that they shouldn't have done. But I don't accept it at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sutherland. 1 moment. Just for confirmation, I gave Councillor Kelsey with homework while that question was being put, Councillor Dunlop. Apparently there are approximately 9 bars, pubs, etc., which are for adult only in the vicinity. I hope that's helpful. So moving on then, thank you for your questions, everyone. We have Mr. Weatherston, you have your hand up. Is that a legacy hand? Do you have a leg? Okay,
yeah, apologies. Sorry.
No problems. Yeah, it's so many screens to look at just to make sure we're not missing anybody. It's fine. Oh, Mrs. Stockwell's back with us. Lovely. Okay, so thank you very much, Councillor Donald, for those questions. So moving on, Mrs. Rogers, do you have any questions for the applicant, please?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's now an opportunity for other persons, our objectors, to make their representations. Now, just to be clear, we have Mrs. Stockwell, we have Councillor Northover, and we have Councillor Dunlop. Mr. Yassin hasn't been able to join us. He's not in the lobby. Okay. I'll speak into the microphone for Councillor Dunlop. I'd be grateful if, when you're giving your summations, and 2 to 3 minutes, please, to make sure that it's fair for all. That you give some reference as to which your objection is, please, so it would be helpful for us to have reference to that. So if I go to the objections, which are from page 7, is that correct? We've got 2, 3, 4 and 5. Oh, well, which one of those is yours then as you go through? That would be helpful. Thank you very much. So, Mrs. Stockwell, I'll call you first. You have the floor to make your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Good afternoon. I am objecting to this application because the applicant appears to be unsuitable, as is the neighbourhood and the premises. I invite you to consider my written objection, your own policy and all relevant law. In particular, I say that you have no power to commit yourself on future decisions and are in no way tied to past decisions of this committee. To do so would contradict Parliament's clear intention that you reconsider afresh every year whether to licence this activity. I say your duty is to local residents and businesses. The applicant is only one of many businesses and you owe them no special allegiance. Once a year, you have every right to move the goalposts for the applicant. You have heard that the applicant is not unsuitable because of the websites, and it's quite right that it is quite illegal to have websites with unsuitable content for children which don't need any sort of age verification, apart from answering a question, are you over 18? I say that it may not be illegal, but it does make somebody unsuitable to be licensed if they are not insisting on age verification documentation being submitted before allowing anyone onto any sites which are indecent material. You've also heard that this neighbourhood has a few adult venues. Well, I say that as councillors, you are already very well aware of the nature of the other venues in this area because it's only just up the road from your town hall. For confirmation, the following public registers are available. There is the Care Quality Commission register, which has a very helpful map. There is the English Heritage map, which shows you where the listed buildings are. There is your own council's map of Old Christchurch Road Conservation Area, again showing which is a protected area for historic reasons. There is the EPC register showing where you have had certificates for residential property and where they've been for commercial property, which will confirm that the residential property in this area is growing. There's also the business rate search, which again, you can see premises dropping off, and your own planning register. I don't count this as new information because it is all publicly available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stockwell. Thank you. Now your opportunity, Councillor Northover, to make your presentation, please. And can you ensure there are new points? Thank you, Councillor Northover.
Okay, I haven't made a presentation as such, but I will just briefly go over some things that have come up. So I'm making an objection on the basis that the area has changed and I do not think the applicant is a suitable person. There is a huge number of new premises that have opened recently with lots and lots of cafes, and the whole feeling around that area is quite vibrant and family orientated now in the day. There's a lot of school children that are living in the flats above, and I think it's really important that they are protected from seeing and hearing the things that we've heard about recently connected with the premises. I think that the fact that the websites were put onto the window, they within 2 clicks you're on pornographic material, and that the applicant thought that that was okay is what shows that he is not a suitable person. It doesn't really matter whether or not he owns those websites, it's that his judgment is poor. That's why I'm saying he is not suitable there. There was I had spoken to a dancer from there and she told me that the toilets have no doors. I should have raised that earlier. I'm sorry I didn't, but maybe that could be asked about. I'm interested to hear that women are in fact allowed in on their own. I think that if a woman comes in on her own and there's any sort of difficulties about keeping her safe, then imagine how is she kept safe once she leaves the premises? Because most of my concerns are about the environment that it creates for all the other women who are living and working in the area, having to walk in the vicinity of the area near to the men that are coming out of those clubs. So it's not really so much to do with how strict it might be right inside the club. It's walk a few steps down the road, and what kind of environment have we created regarding the safety of women? I think that's all of my points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Northover. And Councillor Dunlop, now your opportunity to sum up. If you could make sure that it's new points, please. Thank you.
Yes, I don't think I've actually mentioned any of my points. I'm taking you don't want me to actually read my objection because that's available in the pack.
Absolutely fine. You read the whole objection out. There's no need to do that. You are objection number 3. Yes? That's your objection, I believe. And we've read it thoroughly. If you'd like to extrapolate from that, because I think it would take quite a long time to read that, and we have understood it, but if you'd like to take out those salient points, we will be very happy to hear those. Thank you, Councillor Dunlop.
I'll do that, Chairman. I'll pick the main points. I think that the first main point is to remember that we are looking at a period of, it doesn't matter that there's been a Section 10 venue there for 17 years, it's irrelevant. We're looking at the period since temptation burst onto our scene, and boy, don't we know about it. We've been, I think, inundated with breaches. I don't believe that the activities of this club at all are compatible with the council's big plan and our core values. I think that this behaviour is just not acceptable anywhere, and it's certainly not acceptable in what I'm calling the heart of the town, and it is undergoing a metamorphosis. And I need to be really clear about this, because as I said, the council, which started off with Bournemouth Borough Council, have put in a huge amount of effort to actually change this area, to make a significant change, to turn it into something else, to attract families, to make it pleasant for people who live there, work there, to bring in a new kind of visitor. It's been a conscious decision, and we're making a conscious change, and there is a growing number of residents moving in there with families. In addition, we have the Beale store is now in pre-application. That includes a large amount of residential above the retail units there. So it is completely transforming as an area where people want to live and work and enjoy. Off the back of that, we have lots of new cafes coming in. We are developing a cafe culture. It's a place for shoppers, for workers, for people to sit down and enjoy the environment. And that goes from day to night. So, you know, it's somewhere that you can take your children to enjoy a meal and enjoy the area. It'll take that day to night thing. We've put a great amount of effort into developing it as part of our cultural heart. We've invested in it in Festival Coast Live. We have activities in there. We have markets there throughout the summer. We've expanded the Christmas Tree Wonderland. And as I've illustrated in my objection, there are some significant things happening in our town centre which are completely transforming our cultural landscape, and that's with the AUB taking over the theatre, that's with restaurants like the Ivy coming in literally just a short way down the road, and of course the Gallery Giant has made a significant impact, and those things are attracting the kind of visitor that we want to Bournemouth. That's the important thing here. The area has changed. It's now working towards attracting the right kind of business. So it's changed culturally. It's changed from the residents that are moving in there. What I'm saying to you is it is a dramatic transformation. It's quite significant. And I've illustrated the amount of money that was put into the area to make that change. I think what I'm saying to the committee is that I'm afraid this type of venue completely undermines what we're trying to achieve. It's not a venue that anyone would want their child to live near. It's not a venue that people want in the vicinity when they're enjoying food. And I have spoken to other businesses, and the message I got back from them was they rather hoped, as it was closed during the lockdown, it wouldn't reopen, but or turn into something else. So I'm directly asking the committee to acknowledge the significant change to this area and recognise that this type of venue is completely unsuitable. This type of location is completely unsuitable for a sexual entertainment venue, and it undermines everything that we are trying to achieve with tourism and culture. And I ask the committee not to approve this renewal. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dunlop. Okay, so we now move on to questions of our objectors, and we'll start with members. Members, do you have any questions for any of our objectors?
No, Chairman.
Councillor Parr?
No.
Okay. I just have one, which was the question I think that was put by Councillor Northover with regard to the judgment with regard to the pornographic site being poor of the applicant, that he looked at it and he felt that was okay. I was wondering, what were you basing that on? Were you basing that on his business approach, that he would look at it from a business point of view as to what would be appropriate for his business? Or you were looking at it from a personal approach as to what he thought personally? I'd be grateful if you could confirm that. Thank you.
I think it could be either or both, because I don't know what capacity he was thinking in when he thought it was an appropriate advert to put on a window where children would be able to see it. So he hasn't got any regard for safeguarding if he thinks that putting a pornographic website on a public window is something that a normal person would think is okay.
Thank you. I'm just noting that because I wanted to have that answer to refer to later. Thank you very much. The other matter was something that Councillor Dunlop, you said that you felt that this particular premise wasn't compatible with council's values, but you are aware that we need to ensure that they satisfy the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 82 rather than council values per se. So that is what the subcommittee's remit is today. Although I take your point in case, but it's not something that we can consider just on that line. Okay. So that said, we move on now to our applicant. Do you have any questions of the objectors? Thank you. Mr. Sutherland.
Madam, I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Weatherston, did you have any questions you'd like to raise?
Madam, I have no questions. Thank you.
Very much. And Mrs. Rogers, any questions for our objectors?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, so we then move on then to our summing up. I know that we've just had a presentation, so the summary will be similar, but if you can almost give an executive summary to what you've said, that would be very helpful. And it's the party who spoke last to go first. So that's you, Councillor Dunlop, if you're ready. Yes, just to give us a brief summary, if you so wish, of matters that are most important to you that you'd like us to consider regarding your presentation. Thank you. You don't have to if you don't want to. It's a matter of you.
Now, I'm happy to try and consolidate my main points. This goes to very clearly the changing profile of the residents, which we have evidence of. We can get that for ourselves, and it goes to the how it's going to change over time. We know there are new residents moving in. We know there's been an increase in a number of children in the area. It's about the profile of the residents, and my other point is really about it's about how the area has changed completely in terms of its cultural aspirations, and how the customer who comes there is changing, how we are bringing events and festivals into the area to attract a specific type of visitor. We've had loads of new businesses move in. We have family restaurants, and we have new shops. And it is completely changed, Chairman. This remains, in my opinion, as the portfolio holder for tourism and culture, not the kind of venue that we need in this cultural heart of the town. And it is in fact it is now having an opposite effect to what we are trying to achieve and how we're trying to change that area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dunlop. Councillor Northover?
I think I used my last spot to pretty much sum up, so I don't think I've got anything further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Northover. Mrs. Stockwell?
I think I've covered everything. Thank you, Councillor Butt.
Okay, it's chair with respect, Mrs. Stockwell. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Stockwell. Moving on then, Mr. Sutherland. Oh, Mr. Sutherland, your opportunity to sum up, if you so wish.
Sorry, Madam. Again, my finger was slow, I'm afraid, in unmuting myself.
In your own time. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam, in relation to this particular application, and this, it is some additional information, but it I think has come out of some of the representations that you have heard. My client has invested a substantial figure in the premises and the area at the moment, with the purchase of the premises and lease and the refurbishment, that it's close to about 750,000. And it wasn't information that I've provided elsewhere, but it I think comes out of other comments that have been made by the objectors.
You'll obviously be aware that financial considerations are not something that we can consider.
Which is why I hadn't mentioned it before, Madam, but I know that it was being referred to you, that there was substantial investment in the area, and my client was keen to say, yes,
and he is part of that.
Yes,
take your point.
I think so. I think so,
yes.
Madam. And I only put it on that basis. Madam, in relation to this application, it is an application for renewal, and as part of that renewal, there are additional decisions that we are inviting the committee to make. Those additional decisions relate to the layout of the second floor, which has already been approved from the premises license perspective. And the second approval is in relation to the display, which is on the window, which can be seen at pages 23 and 24. The silhouettes are what I seek approval for. Obviously, the pictures on page 24 actually include silhouettes and the websites, but I've not referred to that. And obviously, as you've indicated, it's a matter for the committee as to how they determine the front windows should look. If the committee are not with me in permitting the silhouettes to be displayed, then of course the frontage would be as per page 23. In respect of the renewal itself, Madam, premises has been a sexual entertainment venue for a number of years. I accept that we're looking at a renewal, and I accept that obviously you will consider the application on its own merits. However, it would be my submission to you that the fact that the premises has operated in this place, in this location, is a factor that it can be taken into account. In respect of some of the changes, it's alleged or suggested that some of those are breaches. It's not accepted that they are breaches as such. It is accepted that, of course, the conditions which were on the licence will change if the committee renew the licence. And it's on that basis that, of course, the practices which were permitted by the previous licence will not continue. And I think I've made that clear as we've gone along to the committee. In respect of the renewal itself, the committee will no doubt take into account the area, and it is possible that as part of the process of considering the area and in looking at the premises, if you felt that it was appropriate that the layout of the frontage of the premises was such that it would be more anonymous, that would be more in keeping with the area, then of course it is open to the committee to direct as such in relation to their approvals for what can be shown on the frontage of the premises. It's our submission that it is an adult area for entertainment in the at night time. Reference has been made again to cafes and other premises which are operating during the day, but I would invite the committee to look at the area and the locality at the time that the premises is open. And at that time, as has been indicated, there are a number of late night bars. I think references have been made to at least 9. And of course, there is also the casino, which is practically next door. It's on that basis, Madam, that we invite the committee to renew the licence for 12 months. Obviously, we would invite the committee to make the changes or approve the changes that we seek. However, if the committee are not with us in relation to those changes, we would still seek the committee to approve the renewal to enable the premises to operate lawfully as it has done, in compliance with the rules as it has done, and will continue to do so even when those rules and conditions change. Madam, unless I can assist you further.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sutherland. It's extremely helpful. A comprehensive breakdown there. Thank you very much. A breakdown in the nicest possible sense. Overview might be a better word. Thank you. Mr. Weatherston, did you wish to have a period of time for a summary, or are you content with Mr. Sutherland's summary?
No, I'm content with his summary. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Rogers, did you want to add anything with regard to your role as licensing officer?
No, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, thank you very much, everybody, for all those contributions. I think we've thoroughly thrashed out, so to speak, all the issues, and the subcommittee have a lot to think about. So I will now conclude the hearing, and at the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and our clerk to deliberate. Notification of subcommittee's decision will be provided within a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations. Notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And I'd ask our legal advisor, Mr. Lewin, please, if he'd kindly explain that right of appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So if, let me just get the grounds. So there are effectively 4 grounds of renewal, or I should say discretionary, 4 discretionary grounds for refusing the application. And really there are 2 relevant ones. The first is in paragraph A of, subparagraph A of paragraph 12.3 of Schedule 3 to the 1982 Act, and that's to refuse the application because the applicant is unsuitable to hold the licence by reason of having been convicted of an offence. So there's no suggestion that that's true of this case, or for any other reason, and that gives the subcommittee quite a broad margin of discretion, any other reason. The other is in subparagraph D, and this I think is where, well, the grant or renewal of the licence would be inappropriate, having regard to the character of the relevant locality or the use to which any premises in the vicinity are put. And well, obviously the subcommittee will make its decision in due course, but the significance of those two is if the application is refused under ground A, let me just make sure I've got this absolutely right. So I've got it in front
sorry,
of me.
Mr. Lewin. Thank you very much. I was just referring to my clerk for a point of clarification there. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Right.
So, are you complete?
Well, I was going to say that there are rights of appeal if the application is refused under ground A, so that relates to the suitability of the applicant, but not if it relates to your judgment of what's appropriate in this particular location. So if the application is refused on that basis, the only way of challenging it is judicial review. But this will be made clear in the decision notice.
Oh, I see. So it's one head of case with regard to the suitability of the applicant, then there can be an appeal.
Yes.
If not, then it's judicial review. Anything else
Yeah.
is judicial review. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So thank you very much again, everyone, for your contributions today. And we're now going to take a short adjournment, and we will resume very, very soon. Should I give a time as to resuming? Are we going to go on to the next? We are going to go on to the next item. Okay, so officers, we will take how long? 10 minutes? We will take a 10-minute break and we will reconvene at 20 to 1. Thank you very much, everybody. We shall do our very best to draw a suitable conclusion for all parties involved. And thank you so much for your contribution today. Good morning to all of you. Thank you. And if those of you who are not at the next hearing, if you'd like to leave us, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Good morning to you. and you're very welcome back to this hearing of the Licensing Subcommittee today, Wednesday, the 20th of July. And we go on to item 6, substantive, which is the exclusion of public and press. And in relation to the items of business appearing below, the subcommittee is asked to consider the following resolution. That under section 100A, subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 in part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information. So I will now ask that the live stream end. Thank you.